G'day there, it's Laban Ditchburn, affectionately known as the world's best courage coach, and I'm about to join Prosper on the online prosperity show, and I'm very excited. You want to watch this show if you are at a point in your life where you know things aren't quite right and you're looking for help. Ask for help, not so that you appear weak, but so that you can remain strong and keep asking for help until you get it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvenga, and today we have a guest who's redefined the meaning of transformation and courage. Now, Laban, how are you doing, my man?
Mate, if I was any better, I'd be embossed and bronzed and erected in the town square somewhere. I'm blessed.
I hope that's something that is legal because, you know, if anything else, we're meeting a world where courage actually meets transformation. Is that part of the deal?
Without courage, I don't think anything can happen, Prosper. So it's just funny the pertinence of the topic keeps becoming more and more relevant to me as the years go by. So what a great time to be a courage coach.
Absolutely. Well, and the longer you stay within this space, the clearer it becomes that this definitely is a calling for you. Now, for those that are meeting Laban for the very first time, welcome to the Online Prosperity Show. So Laban is affectionately known as the world's best courage coach, and he teaches people to take bold, massive, and courageous actions to facilitate their own miraculous outcomes. So whether you're battling personal demons, seeking to scale new heights in your career, or just simply looking for a life filled with more purpose and passion, I think this episode is going to be the one that you want to watch. So, but for those that are maybe battling addiction and maybe you're looking to conquer life's toughest challenges and you think you've done it all, I think this man has also done it all, and he's going to be telling us how he actually came back to then roadmap this journey for both of us. Right now, Laban, it's a pleasure to have you on here, and let's just dive into your inspiring journey. How did you earn the title World's Best Courage Coach?
Well, it's an interesting question, Prosper. It happened in the height of the lockdowns in 2021, and it's a pretty long story, but I'll paraphrase as best I can to allow for the time we have together. But it was the result. I had started my entrepreneurial journey as a speaker and as a coach, and I'd created the podcast really in unison with the lockdowns. And I came from a background in recruitment for 14 years, did IT recruitment and had a crack at running my own business in 2019, which was a total unmitigated financial disaster. Nearly went bankrupt 4 times throughout that year. And 3.5 years prior to that, I'd started my healing journey. And I used to be a professional degenerate. And I used to struggle with drink and drugs and gambling and philandering and limiting beliefs and negative self-talk and autoimmune disease. And I started my healing journey in 2015. And I knew in 2019 that I wanted to be a speaker. And of course, when the lockdowns kicked down, we were in Melbourne, Australia, and the only way to really get my message out to the world was to create the podcast. And through the journey of the podcast, I think I recorded 100 episodes in 8 months in 2020 because there was nothing else to do, right? And part of the community of people that I met through the podcast were some of the top life coaches on the planet, for lack of a better word. And I heard about this one guy by the name of Steve Hardison, who's a Mormon guy out of Mesa, Arizona. And he was a complete and utter enigma. Like he didn't exist anywhere. And he used to coach people like Byron Katie, Iyanla Vanzant, who was Oprah Winfrey's personal coach for a couple of years. Lots of, billion-dollar CEOs and professional athletes. And to work with him, to give you an idea, is $200,000 for 50 hours of his time. And you have to do it at his home in Arizona. The only footage of him that existed was a presentation he did that was recorded 10 years ago. And it's, if you want to get on YouTube and just search these letters, TBO, LIT, NFL, and it's an acronym for the best offensive linebacker in the NFL, TBO, LIT, NFL. And you'll find there's a couple of YouTube channels that have it, just they're all the same video. And Prospero, watch this video. And it impacted me so profoundly, it shifted my entire being. And it's a conversation around the first Tongan footballer in the NFL, but it's nothing to do with sport, really. It's about the power of being and who do I need to be in order to achieve X, Y, Z. And I was like, dang, I want to meet this guy. And I've become pretty well known for my outrageous cold calls. And most of my guests in the first year or so at least came from me cold calling them, and lots of well-known people as well. And so I got this guy's phone number and I called him up. And I'm in Australia, he's in America. And he picks up the phone and says, hey, this is Steve. And I said, Steve Hardison? He goes, yes, it is. I go, Steve, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia here. He goes, Laban, so great to hear from you. I've been waiting for this call all my life. And I've never spoken to this guy before, Prosper. And I'm like, wow, what a way to answer a phone call. Now, I knew, Prosper, that this guy had everything. A very successful guy, happily married for 40 years. He's in his 60s. And I'm thinking, how can I add value to this guy's life? Because my whole philosophy has been, what value can I add this person's life? And the further up you go, as in the more financially and health-wise they are, and the more strong their relationship is, the harder it is to add value to them in the interim. And so he gets on there, and I said, Steve, I just watched this video, and it completely and utterly shifted my being, and I just wanted to ask you one very specific question. And he said, what is it, Laban? I said, Steve, what do you need help with? He goes, wow, Laban, I want to acknowledge you for asking me that question. He goes, you know what, I'm 63, I'm 10% body fat, I do 10 miles a day, I got everything a man could ever want, but I really want to thank you for asking me that question. And I said, oh, no worries, Steve, you're welcome. I said, are you still not doing podcasts and interviews? And this guy, Prosper, had turned down being on the Oprah Winfrey show back in the day 4 times because he was coaching Iyanla Vanzant, who was Oprah's coach, who had her own show on the Oprah Winfrey Network called Fix My Life, Iyanla, or Iyanla Fix My Life. Very, very popular show in the States. And he said, no, I'm not. And I said, oh, no worries. The reason I ask, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, and I got this podcast series, Become Your Own Superhero, and I'm well on my way to being known as the world's most positively influential speaker. But someone that I was talking to recently actually said that I admire that there's too much ego associated with that statement. And Steve, this devout Mormon, yells down the phone at me, Prosper. He goes, Laban, you tell that person to fuck off, using the full word. He goes, do you know who I am? And I go, who are you, Steve? He goes, I'm the best coach in the world. And the way he delivered that line, Prosper, was with no ego. It was this incredible power and energy in this statement. And he truly believed that he was. And as a result, was able to create amazing outcomes for his clients. And I had this 15-minute conversation with Steve that completely and utterly changed my life forever. And I called up a friend of mine by the name of Chris Doris, who had been coached by Steve years earlier. And I'd become friends with Chris in the 4 or 5 months leading up to this. And I rang him up and I go, hey, Chris, I just spoke to Steve Hardison. He goes, what do you mean? I go, I just had this amazing 15-minute chat with Steve Hardison. He goes, what are you talking about? And I go, man, I just had this amazing transformational conversation with Steve Hardison. He goes, Laban, do you have any idea of the gift of courage you have to bring to the world? And in that moment, Prosper, the idea for the world's best courage coach came about. And what followed after that was this ridiculous cold call with the help of Chris to formulate this language where I cold called the CEO of a huge real estate company in Australia. And when he picked up the phone and he answered and I introduced myself, he said, oh, Laban, do we know each other? I said, we've never met before. And he said, how can I help? I said, well, today's your lucky day. And this guy laughed, the CEO of the real estate company. He goes, why is it my lucky day, Laban? I said, because I'm the world's best courage coach, and I teach your people how to take bold, massive, and courageous action so that they can facilitate their own miraculous outcomes. And I later pitched $250,000 to this company back then when I was earning $100 an hour, and it completely broke through the glass ceiling in my mind of what was actually possible and the value that I knew that I could bring to people. And so ever since that moment, Prosper, that declaration has resonated with exactly the people that I want to spend time with. And it's a really great polarization technique, because people that are triggered by it for the negative aren't people that would resonate with me anyway. And the ones that are exactly who I want to spend time with. Not necessarily clients, but people I just want in my circle. And then when I've been interviewed on other big platforms and introduced by people like Les Brown and on Brad Lee's Dropping Bombs podcast as the world's best courage coach, it's reaffirming out into the universe. And so for me, from an accountability point of view, I have to be in integrity with that statement. Because if I'm not behaving as the world's best courage coach, then I'm fraudulent. So I'm in this self-forward perpetual motion of having to continually level up. And no one else has made that declaration. Like, the domain name was available on the internet, for goodness sake. And it's just been the single best thing I've done for giving people clarity that aren't in the personal development space about what I do. Because you go to a restaurant, you go to a bar, you meet someone, and they're like, "Hey, Laban, what do you do?" And I'm world's best courage coach. And 99 times out of 100, they say, "Wow, what does that look like?" And I go, "Well, I teach people how to take bold, massive, and courageous action so that they can facilitate their own miraculous outcomes. And I do that through my speaking, my coaching, my book, my podcast series, and the masterminds that I run." And so it gives people clarity very quickly about what I can do and how I can help them. And for people that are in the personal development space, they can tell immediately whether it's something that aligns with what they need help with, or they want to know more. And it elicits all kinds of avenues of conversations for people that are like, "Well, tell me more about the book, tell me more about the podcast, tell me more about the coaching, yada, yada, yada." So that's the slightly abbreviated version, Prosper, but that hopefully gives you a clear idea.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking us on that journey, because that alone is the episode right there. I mean, obviously, it's all about taking courageous and bold moves that will actually put you in places you never thought existed. Now, Laban, you did tell us when you started your journey, you were a professional degenerate, but from what you explained, this just seemed like a normal bloke to me. What's wrong with what it is that you were doing before?
I was a very high functioning alcoholic and degenerate gambler and drug abuser. And when I say high functioning, it was because I was able to maintain, for the meantime, a job and show up to work on time sometimes and report into my manager. And on the surface of it, Prosper, most people would probably agree with you. But deep down inside and in my private life, I was suffering immeasurably. And I was borrowing money to gamble, drinking 6 to 7 nights a week, and a lot of alcohol, and my mental health was suffering. And had I continued on that trajectory, one thing that a lot of people don't know about problem gambling or pathological gambling is that it has the highest rates of suicide out of all the addictive behaviors that are out there, like drinking, drugs, and all the other stuff, because of how quickly you lose everything. And I was at the precipice of that point. And that was when I reached out for help to the Gamblers Helpline. And I detail the full background and story in my book for people that are interested in hearing a very entertaining story about that particular journey. And it's important because a lot of people can see themselves in it. And when you're around a certain group of people that have normalized that kind of behavior, you don't think it's a problem. It's because it's become normalized. And you continue to attract people that think it's okay to go and do all these things. But inevitably, and by the grace of God, I didn't end up in jail or dead. But I have friends that did. And that's the whole point of this. It's like, that is not functional behavior. And it all stemmed from a childhood of escapism that came from being a child of divorce, and nothing more innocuous than that. And so many people are affected by divorce and don't have a strong masculine role model growing up or a strong feminine role model growing up. And so escapism's a very common pathway. And for some people, it's exercise, some people it's drugs, some people it's alcohol. And I had the triple threat, and it was very quickly killing me. So it was way worse internally than it looked on the outside, for sure.
Absolutely. So you were presenting as a public success, but an internal failure. And obviously, from what you're saying, fish do not see the water that they swim in, and neither can people see the air that they breathe. So many people are in and around those sort of environments and activities. And like you say, it has been normalized. I mean, obviously, Australia has a very big culture of drinking, and where else would you drink? At a pub or at a RSL where there's gambling machines already in there. So it's just literally set up like that, and I don't think people see anything wrong with that. But you went on and you obviously noticed that this wasn't the life for you, but you'd hit rock bottom. And from what you said, rock bottom was an actual motivator for you because you had maybe been at the verge of being bankrupt and going through what you were going through. What were some of the biggest obstacles or fears that you would have faced when you started deciding this is not the life that I want to live? Because so many people, if it was that easy, they would walk away, take a shower, and become a new man from that.
Two parts to that, Prosper. One of them was I knew from a very young age, like 6 or 7, that I was destined for great things. And at 35, which is when I hit that rock bottom point, I realized that the direction that I was heading, I was not able to achieve that life. The second part was, and I talk about this a lot, the pain of inaction was far greater than the pain of the future. So like I was forced to do something about it because I was in so much distress that I didn't care what the pain of the growth was. And, like a lot of people never get to that point, and so they don't have that motivator. Some people don't need that much. My experience is the people that take the most amount of action to get the most amount of success out of their lives are people that have gone through the most. And if they haven't destroyed their brain with drugs or their physical health so badly that it takes years and years to recover, and they don't have the information around how to heal their body properly through diet and nutrition and stuff, most people bounce back better than they were. And I just turned 44 in June of 2024, whenever you listen to this. And I'm faster, stronger, better, more resilient, more calm, more measured, more loving, more forgiving than I've ever been. And yeah, like I had to. It was just a divine intervention. It was, I'm not a religious guy at all, Prosper, but I'm deeply, deeply spiritual and have a very strong relationship with God and Source. And that was the result of getting these gentle love taps for many, many years. I think we all get them. And then I didn't pay attention to it because I was so numbed out. And then God just goes, whack. And then sometimes it could be a divorce if you're married. Sometimes it can be, bankruptcy. Sometimes it could be your health collapsing or whatever. And then we take action. And I suppose the point of me sharing my story in the manner that I do within the domains that I do is that to help people speed up that rock bottom moment without having to suffer so much material loss. And I'm talking about relationships and, kids and that kind of thing. Because I wasn't married, I didn't have children. So if I had, God knows what would have happened. So, maybe that answers your question, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us there, because so many people go through all of this, and like you said, based on the environments and having come from where you came from, you did mention, somewhat of a broken home. You wouldn't have had any sort of male role models to aspire to become and things like that. So, monkey see, monkey do, basically what you would have been seeing in that particular environment is what then, transpired in your life. But asking for help is often a very difficult thing for a lot of people. And you seem to have gotten out of this. You would have gotten help, obviously. How did you go about that part? Because if we can help people to have the courage to literally notice, and have clarity of what they're going through, and then the rope and the steps for them to actually get out of that. Part of
Yeah.
what you did was ask for help.
Well, there's a great quote from a mentor and a hero of mine, Les Brown, who hopefully you've heard of, who was very generous in writing the foreword for my book, actually, Prosper. And he says, ask for help, not so that you appear weak, but so that you can remain strong, and keep asking for help until you get it. And in the interim, in the very beginning, you're going to require a lot more help than you can give. But once you get that leg up, it's imperative, if you are to be successful, in my opinion, and the opinion of other people that have already achieved this, that you have to become a world-class servant. But you cannot give from an empty cup. And that's why you have to ask for help. And one of the key messages that I love to talk to people about is finding someone that you can confide in that will not try and fix you. Because if you go to a family member or a best mate whose life's shambles as well, and you go, Davey, I've got this gambling, and then they go, oh, you should need to do this. The last thing you need is someone trying to fix your stuff. Just having someone to listen without judgment is probably the most important thing. And that's what I got access to through the Gamblers Helpline. And I spoke to this incredible woman, Mary, who listened to me without judgment for the first time in my life. Then she shared some of that information around the suicide rates for pathological gamblers. And that put a bolt of lightning into me. I never wanted to take my own life. I didn't want to put that burden of whatever on any family member. Hey, Laban's just committed suicide. What? Why? It's one of the most selfish things you can do. And people say, oh, you shouldn't say that. You don't want people to feel guilty. Yeah, you're supposed to live. And the reason why people commit suicide is because they don't see any pathway to help, when in reality, almost in every single case, it's absolutely very easy to see another perspective. And some of the most successful speakers and transformational people that I've ever met have come through the most horrendous upbringings and experiences, and abuse and death experiences and jail, and you name it. The more hardcore their experience, the more effective they are in many cases as an inspiring speaker or mentor or coach. And so I ask for help all the time, Prosper, but I build up a lot of reciprocity because of that. What value can I add that person's life? And I do that with every person I meet, by the way. Every single, I go to the supermarket, think of little ways that I can add a little bit of value. And do you know what I mean? I'll give you an example. My wife and I live in the Sunshine Coast here, and we were at there's an O2 recovery centre. It's like a beautiful place to get compression boots, and they have cold plunges and saunas and stuff. And the guy who owns the place, through him learning about the challenges that my wife and I have had with pregnancies, and we've had 20 miscarriages in a row, to give you an idea, he opened up. His sister had a 21-week emergency C-section from a miscarriage, or basically a stillbirth, on the weekend. And he was there in the room, and clearly he was traumatized by it. But him hearing what Anna had gone through, he even said he was very grateful that we were able to share that from a position of strength, not from a victimhood point of view. And it helped him feel better about the future, because he's still in, crazy mode. And it's just, now I have this incredible Rolodex of people that I can call at a moment's notice, and for different things. And everyone can do that. I'm not a famous guy. I'm not a well-known personality, but the people that I do meet and impact, they don't forget me as often as they used to. And they remember me for much better reasons than what they used to. And that's my encouragement for you listening to this. who do I need to become in order to start attracting people in my life that I can reach out to for help and also be of service to as well. And that's a real game changer.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, obviously, you keep mentioning Les Brown, but my favorite person in that sort of space is Zig Ziglar, and he mentions help enough people get what they want, and you too will get that which you want and need. And obviously, when you give off of what you've got, I mean, you did mention the universe and source and God will replenish what you have taken away in order to help somebody else. But from there, your journey to sobriety and all those other addictions that you had, obviously with alcohol and all the other addictions, those are self-imposed sort of ailments or illnesses, so to speak. And I'm saying this with utmost love and respect for those people that are going through that stuff. But you also had a remission with an autoimmune disease. Now, what were the key factors that actually, contributed first of all to this remission? What is it that you are now doing, and the journey itself there? Because I want us to get past that. How did you then be able to have the courage from somebody who's an alcoholic to call one of the most powerful coaches in the world?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question, Pros, because it's so important in terms of the healing, and I really do attribute the change in my diet to the success of my recovery, and I'll explain in a minute. I suffered from gastrointestinal reflux disorder, which is GERD is the acronym they call it, right? I also had a bunch of other undiagnosed issues with the benefit of hindsight. And autoimmune disease is insidious, but the challenge was that for 17 years I've been suffering from this, Prosper, and 20 different surgeons and doctors over those years all said in unison, it's incurable and you're going to have to be on this medication forever. And the first thing that I would say about the allopathic medical system is them, because they are so full of themselves and have so much ego driven into them from when they are at university that they are the be all. And if the last 4.5 years hasn't taught you that, then I don't know I can't help you. But I fixed it in 4 days by cutting gluten out of my diet initially and came off the medication without any rebound symptoms. And I was pissed. And I was like, what else are these idiots wrong about? So that started this rabbit hole and I've read 750 books or so in the last 6.5 years, Prosper, to give you an idea. And that excludes thousands of hours of articles and YouTube videos and other content on different platforms, all non-fiction stuff or stuff that relates to the challenges that I've had. And as I came to learn that we've been lied to about literally every single thing on the planet, I started to take back the power and started to self-educate. And as part of that, me personally, I used, out of necessity, I adopted a Paleolithic ketogenic protocol for 3.5 years. So it was basically the carnivore diet for 3.5 years. And I transformed my physicality. I lost 60 pounds of body fat, put on 30 pounds of muscle, put on 1 pound of bone density, and all of my symptoms went into full remission. I started running ultra marathons out of the blue, became super strong, super high libido, like all the good markers. And as I learned more and more and more about the truth of what actually is out there, I got better and better and better. My mental health got better and better and better. And as soon as you get to a point where you heal the gut, which is where 90% of all the dopamine, the serotonin, the norepinephrine, all of the feel-good hormones are generated in the gut. And that's why I believe I was able to not have to utilize a 12-step program. And not that I see any issue with that, but I would prefer not to have to go to meetings for the rest of my life, is because the high that I was able to generate from feeling good and healthy far outweighed doing 1,000 beers and putting a bag of cocaine up my nose. So it was effortless for me to give up the stuff. I'm 8 years sober in August of this year from alcohol, 9 years for gambling, and about 8.5 for drugs, like recreational drug use. And it's easy. I got married in Las Vegas 2 years ago with my beautiful wife, Anna. I got given gambling vouchers and free booze and just no interest. I don't care. And when you kill the desire to want to do it, it's effortless. So I can focus and I don't want to paint this perfect picture, by the way. I'm not perfect in what I do, Prosper. One of the things that I've recently started being very disciplined with, which I should have been doing a long time ago, but I didn't know, was meditation. Because I've been operating in fight or flight for the last 4.5, 5 years. We fled the tyranny of lockdown in Melbourne and went and lived in Mexico to protect our medical freedoms, like I said at the beginning. And trying to earn money as an entrepreneur is hard enough in your home country where you speak the language. Try to earn it in Mexico. And but now the meditation is just freeing me up, and I'm more calm, and the cravings for the sugar and stuff have dissipated. And do you know what I mean? It's all tied in. It's all an ongoing work in progress. And I just want to optimize my time here on this in the physical form and create as much impact, while serving myself at the highest level. And that's why going around making a statement like world's best courage coach, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, which is I'm half New Zealand, by the way, and half Australian, is like tall poppy syndrome. But I don't care, because what people think of me is none of my business. And when you start to operate from that place, your life will be infinitely better as well.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for laying that out for us, because this really then opens up the platform of how you then took flight, because you can't do well if you don't feel well. No matter what it is, if you've got an ailment or whatever it is, your body, your livelihood would want to fix that first before you can actually start solving for all the other needs that you might have. And I concur with you. I mean, obviously, having lived in the most locked down city in the world in the time that you're talking about, I think it was 284 days. And yeah, I can't wait to hear your Mexican stories, because I was watching some people that were living in medical liberties in different places, and definitely their life completely changed the trajectory. Now that you're feeling better, you then went on, and I think this is when you started the podcast. And obviously in life, I viscerally believe we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. So you've literally lived that life, but then you learned how to live the best version of that life. Because when you're drunk and everything, you might think is the best possible, but then it comes with a hangover. It comes with everything else, all the hang-ups, and you have to do it again for that cheap dopamine and things of that nature that happens with those certain substances. And now you're contributing and sending the elevator down, and you, like you said, gave us 100 episodes in a flash. Tell us what that journey was like when you now knew, wow, this could be possible for me, and this is the kind of life that I could live.
When we eventually got across to the US, Prosper, which is February of 2022, we spent November, December, January in Mexico. We spent 2 lots of 3 months, which is how long our tourist visas were valid for. And 80% of the time we were in America was in the homes of former podcast guests or the associated introductions. Wow. And I had seen, because I had experienced a lot of censorship and had videos deleted. And it's not that I'm trying to be deliberately antagonistic, but I just want to know the truth so I can make a more informed decision. And, just recently I interviewed Senator Pauline Hanson for all our Australian listeners. And I did it in her office in Brisbane. And then I released it on YouTube and on the other platforms. And 4 days later, without any reference to the video, YouTube sent me a message saying, we've demonetized your channel. And it's like, that's been the pattern the entire time, and being laughed at and told I'm a conspiracy nut by family and friends, and had, and I've just stayed strong and committed to my beliefs, and have been vindicated. And so I'm just trusting the process. And so the podcast, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to get into the personal development space and you don't use a podcast, I think you are missing out on a tremendous opportunity, because I've generated less than $250 from ad revenue from the podcast. And it's in the top 5% of downloads globally now, just to give you an idea, which sounds really impressive, but it's not as high as what you would think. But it has generated me more than $1,000,001 worth of free stuff from podcast guests and the introductions that they've made. It's given me unprecedented access to people. I've been invited onto big platforms, big shows. And the point of telling you this is, like, I was destitute broke. I didn't earn any money in 2019 from my failed recruitment business, so I didn't qualify for any of the government handouts. So I did what I had to do to survive, and now I'm fiercely independent. I will never rely on the government for anything ever again. And I don't think anyone should, because it's turning us into a bunch of cowards, and we're becoming interdependent on social services, and it's making us weak. This country, Prosper, Australia, has not experienced any adversity since World War II. And we are in for a big shock around the corner when things get tight. And I think Australia, I'm not saying this to scare people, but things are going to get way tougher than you've ever experienced. And if you're not used to adversity, how you cope with that is going to be a complete and utter freak out. So you need to learn strategies and techniques on how to manage the situation and how to remain cool under fire. Because Seneca, the Greek Stoic, it's always worse in our imagination than it is in our head. And exactly, Prosper's just shown me the Daily Stoic book. And, courage was the first virtue of the Stoics as well. So it's like, I don't think you can breathe without having courage. And we need lots of people to stand up for themselves. And it doesn't take as many people as you would think to affect massive change. If you look around and you're not happy with how the direction that the world's heading, you got to do something about it. And start with what's in your control. And like I said at the beginning, you have to be able to, you can't give from an empty cup. You have to be able to have something in reserve before you start helping other people. You're no good when you're destitute and rock bottom. You're a burden on people. So sort that out quickly. And that's all I did. It's all I did. And I had no choice but to do what I do now for work. The universe said, right, Laban, you've overcome this stuff now. I now want you to talk to other people about it that are further behind than you. And that's why I do what I do. And it's the most rewarding, fulfilling thing you could ever imagine.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us on that journey, because now you have strategically positioned yourself as somebody who's not only qualified to be the one speaking in front of the podium, but you've had lived experience, because so many people, as you would acknowledge, Laban, would maybe just go over a weekend, walk through, some burning coals, and then come back, buy a laptop, and then they call themselves a coach, and that's just what we're seeing in the marketplace. But you've had that lived experience. You've been there. You've actually had to seek help, and now you know what it's like when you're actually working with somebody who's probably lacking courage. And I like what you said about, obviously, the society we're in right now. I mean, there's so many safety nets around us and what it is that we are doing, so much that people are using those safety nets as hammocks. And if the wind comes and starts, twisting those hammocks, everybody's not going to know what hit them. And obviously, if you have been paying attention to what has been happening, it's now coming in the form of our computers not working for no reason. And I don't know what people are going to do in that sort of sense. But that's a story for another day. Now, you found peace in your life now, and obviously, like you say, you no longer need any of that stuff for you to actually get excited about everything else, and that is a significant achievement. How are you now integrating all this newfound peace into your daily life and coaching practice? Because I mean, obviously, so many people need to know.
I read a book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss probably 3.5 years ago. And Brian Weiss was a psychiatrist who specialized in hypnotherapy, and particularly he used to do past life regressional hypnotherapy based on the premise that we are these infinite spiritual beings that inhabit the human form many times. And that book killed any fear of death that I had. And I didn't realize I had one, Prosper. But I read it and I was like, there was a sense of calm that came over me. So I don't have any fear of death. I've self-educated to the point where I believe I have a very good idea of what's actually happening in the world. And an example might be if you're getting caught up in, let's say, politics, for example, I see it now as a form of puppetry, and it's all theatre, it's all a show. So I don't expend any emotional energy really worrying about the outcomes. And when you combine that with trusting in your own divine intelligence, which, I would recommend people watch Joe Dispenza's Rewired documentary series. It's like 13 episodes. You can get it on Gaia TV. They've got a free trial, I think, for 7 days if you want to get it. And just understanding how to rely on, we have everything already within us to create the life of our dreams. In fact, I sign that as probably one of the most common things when I sign books, because it's true. And you can't pay attention to that until you're in a state of this alpha state or this meditative state. You have to still the mind. There's so many, and I get distracted, don't get me wrong, but I prioritize these meditations, and it allows me to get all the answers to what I need. And I don't have to force things. They come to me effortlessly. And it's not that I'm not working, but I'm way more productive when I'm in that flow state. And it's made a damn sight easier by putting the right food in your body. Mm-hmm. And so I've educated myself, and I'm not 8% body fat. One of the things I was talking about earlier, like my go-to stress release was food, because I'd given up all the other stuff. And I was frustrated at myself. Prosper was like, how can I, even when I know all this information about diet, nutrition and stuff, like how can I still put on the weight? And I realized it was because of my, you cannot lose body fat if your cortisol levels are through the roof all the time. And so now this meditation is just bringing me right down. And I've got a Garmin, one of the top Garmin watches that tracks heart rate variability and stuff. And I can see my heart rate drop 30, 40 beats a minute from when I start the meditation to by the time I finish. Like within 3 minutes, it drops from 80 to 40. And that can only ever be a good thing. And then all the answers come to me and I get up and I'm bing, right, let's take on the world. And that's why I'm at peace with, I'm very optimistic for the future. I have no fear of, guys, if a nuclear bomb's going to go off, you ain't going to know about it. You're going to be a shadow burned into the concrete, and you'll be in the another dimension before you can snap your fingers. So don't worry about it. Like, who cares? Who gives a rat's ass, as my father would say. And live life like it's not going to be a nuclear bomb, because nuclear threat has been on the radar for the last 80 years. Talk to anyone who went through the Russian or the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the 60s. If it happens, it happens. Who cares? It's out of my control. So I'm just going to live my best life while I'm here,
Absolutely. I like that. Laban. Now, you mentioned, that fear of death and how so many of us just really get caught up in that particular sort of frequency. And you mentioned you liberated yourself from self-education, and somebody might be wondering, what does that exactly mean? And I've got this example, and maybe you can comment on this a little bit. The one thing that a lot of people fear the most is maybe jumping off of a perfectly sound plane or perfectly moving plane, which is skydiving, right? But have you ever noticed when you're skydiving, you've got an instructor that's strapped at your back who is doing that maybe 3 or 4 times every single day, all right? And that skydiving instructor leaves his home every day in the morning, kisses his wife and kids goodbye, knowing he's going to come and tuck them back in bed. And he doesn't have that fear of death because he's done it so many times, and he knows, he is confident that that's going to work. And I think that's what self-education utterly does. Now, I mean, I don't know, maybe you can comment on that a little bit. And while you're doing that, give us a few tips on what people can actually start doing to really, really put themselves in that space of knowing that, just like a bird, if it perches itself on a branch, it doesn't care whether the branch is old or is a twig that's about to break, because it's got full confidence on its wings that it can fly away before that happens.
Well, I've been skydiving once. I did it in Nambour many years ago, and I was there for quite a few hours because I was a guest of one of the instructors. And from memory, Prosper, I'm pretty sure most of them live their lives from a place of, when it's my time, it's my time. So it's like they take all the necessary precautions, but like if some catastrophic event happens and they die, and I'd met, the instructor had lost people, and that's just the nature of what they're doing. There is a huge amount of risk involved versus driving actually probably driving a car would be more dangerous, I think it is, but like what's the point in worrying about death? Because when you're dead, you won't feel anything. There'll be no more pain. There'll be no more suffering. There'll be no more loss. Like, while you're here is where you're doing all your suffering right now. Staying in a job where you're being bullied or where you are tolerating behavior that is completely out of alignment with who you are. Standing idly by because you're too much of a chicken to put your hand up and say, I don't agree with what's going on here. And leaning into, no matter what happens, things are going to work out. And, one example I'll give you, Prosper, real quick. I'm going to name the company because it happened at the end of 2019. I took a 5-week contract with Cbus Super, the industry super fund, and doing recruitment. And to about a week before Christmas, I got pulled into a meeting room 2 days before my contract was due to be renewed, and we needed that money desperately to pay for our accommodation and to even have some kind of Christmas presents. And they said, Laban, we're going to have to let you go. And I said, oh, okay. Do you mind if I ask why? And they go, yeah. She said, someone overheard you having a conversation with another colleague linking diet and mental health together, and they took offence to it and they were upset about it. And I just smiled, and I knew at that point I was working in a woke nightmare, and there was no point trying to fight for it, And so I just smiled, and her name was Justine, who's now the head of the recruitment team there. Hi, Justine, if you're listening. I smiled, and I said, you know what, Justine? And she goes, what's that, Laban? I go, I'm right. And then 2 years later, I interview an adjunct professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, Prosper, who's been putting into full remission 1/3 of the worst psychiatric patients in the world, suicidal ideology, paranoid schizophrenia, like rapid onset bipolar, lots of medication, like padded cell stuff. He's been putting 1/3 of them into full remission using the same ketogenic diet they developed 120 years ago for children with epilepsy, and another third, massive reductions in symptoms and medication. And that, like, I'm not going to reach out to Justine and say, oh, there you go. Like eventually one day with that person who made that complaint, and I don't know who it was. I wish them nothing but success. But if it takes them 20 years to find out why maybe their child's going through depression, and they realize it's because they're feeding them Cocoa Pops and Weet-Bix for breakfast when they should be feeding them steak and eggs, maybe they should have paid attention to the crazy New Zealand guy that was talking about diet and mental health. So people are on their own journey. They'll find out. But if you want to shortcut the process, seek counsel, not opinion, and get a coach for someone that you really resonate with, that you believe in, and that has already done the things that you want to do. Anyone that I work with, Prosper, I refuse to teach them anything that I haven't done. I don't teach you to scale a business to 7 figures. Until I've done that, I won't touch it. But what I do is I help people see possibility for themselves by using the power of storytelling, powerful anecdotes in many ways like I have today, so that people can see for themselves rather than me telling them what to do. Because if they're not motivated to do anything with it, then they can't be helped. They have to be in enough pain to do something about it. And that's my encouragement. Because compress time. If it saves you 10 years, what dollar amount can you put on that? It's priceless. And especially the last 4.5 years, there's information that I have now that I know has saved people's lives. You know, what good is living your miserable life if you're dead? You know, figure out a way to stay alive and create better impact in the world.
Oh, Laban, you should write another book, because you're spitting fire, my man. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, there's a certain level of person that you become. Like you said, when you self-educate, you no longer subscribe to some sort of the mainstream way of being. And I can see where you were, with that Cbus mob, and there's a lot of talk around somewhat safety for those that are maybe at the back of the room right now, and for, with utmost love and respect, you were just literally trying to save their life. But obviously, like you said, you subscribe to Source and a Gourd. They were literally just taking you out of that, in that instance, what I think would have been a toxic environment for you, based on the sort of words that people can't handle. Now, if people want to find out how they can transform their lives too, and maybe get started on their journey to courage, and I think they need to take one bold step. The first one being maybe getting a hold of you if they possibly can. What would be the best way that people can get in touch, or how can people get started?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, Prosper, I've got, my book is an addiction recovery self-help memoir, which is really for people that are going through that journey. They've either started the recovery journey or they're suffering immeasurably. And then the podcast is all interview style, so very similar to this in many ways, where I interview people that are experts or brilliant in that particular niche that I don't have experience in. And so I interview all kinds of different people. But if you like, everything's available through the website. And you'll either listen to this, or watch this, and you'll resonate with who I am or not. I don't take on that many one-on-one clients, Prosper, because I make sure that I'm world class at setting boundaries and making sure that I don't overextend myself, because I give a lot and I need that time to replenish. And that's why the podcast and the book can answer a lot of those questions early on. And I charge a lot for what I do too, so I'm not available to everyone. So if you're just hitting rock bottom now, maybe call the Gamblers Helpline or read the book, because the book has it's very entertaining, but at the end of every chapter there's like a wrap up and a reason I'm telling you this. And then at the back of the book is all the resources for all the books, not all the books, but a good chunk of the books that I read and the resources that helped me, that had I had those available to me earlier on, it would have expedited the whole process. That's what I would recommend.
Absolutely. I will definitely put all the links to, you know, what you've mentioned, links to the book, links to your website, and also links to the podcast there so that we can, yeah, so that people can get a hold of you and maybe get started on their journey. And maybe they can bet on themselves, because that's what the book is all about. Bet on you. Now, Laban, you've taken us on a whole big journey here, from your rock bottom days to you picking up the phone and speaking to one of the most prized coaches in the world. And now you're sending the elevator down so you can help others, like you say, those that are aligned with your mission and everything else moving forward. But when we started your journey, you were telling us of your days where, you would have been rock bottom and you called the Gamblers Anonymous hotline. If the person that was sitting on the other end was you, right? And your old self is calling and you get to pick that phone call, what sort of advice would you have wanted to hear at that particular moment?
I'd probably give the exact same advice I got. But more importantly, Prosper, I would listen without judgment, and I would not try to fix anything on that call. I wouldn't be I wouldn't allow it to go on and allow the person to wallow in self-pity for too long. I think sometimes we need to wallow in a little bit of self-pity. And I'm not the only coach that thinks that, by the way. I've got a friend of mine, Vanessa Brewers, who thinks it's important to allow people to wallow in a little bit of self-pity from time to time. But you got to cut that off and just say, well, look, what do you want to do about it? Do you want to get better? You want to keep gambling? Like, what do you want to do? You want help? Okay, you want help. Okay, we need to go take advantage of this gambling counselor and start the healing journey. And you have to, the reason why reading was so important, Prosper, was because A, it was very inexpensive. B, one of the books that I read, which is called Facing Codependence by M.E.D.I.A, explained why my behavior was so terrible and not setting boundaries, being a complete and utter cuck, and no wonder women, I was attracting the wrong women, and so I had to de-learn and then relearn the functional behaviors. And I wouldn't have been able to do that because I didn't have any of those role models in my life, but I was able to read about it, and then it all started to fall into place. And the more you read, expand your mind, be open, and have no ego. Like if I lost everything overnight, I'm not inextricably linked to anything, Prosper. I'm world's best courage coach I can have if I'm in a prison camp, nude, stripped of all my material possessions. I can always have that. And a lot of people tie themselves to their jobs, to their kids, to their partners, and they are completely identityless. And you need to reclaim your identity. And you can do that with self-empowerment through reading. But if Laban rang the Gamblers Helpline, I would just listen with the power of 1,000 Spartan warriors like that beautiful woman did. And for those who don't know, who are trying to be more charismatic, being a powerful listener is one of the key components of charisma.
Absolutely. And I concur with that. I mean, obviously, when people call those lines, they just want somebody to hear them out. And if that's all you provide them, you would have actually gotten them that which they are after. I mean, obviously, you've been in the doldrums, you've risen like a phoenix out of the ashes, and now we're excited and celebrating, this newfound person that's now spearheading courage to the masses. What's next? What can people expect, Laban?
Well, the number one priority for us, when I say us, my wife and I, is to start this IVF journey. And despite all the challenges, she's actually very healthy, but she doesn't have any fallopian tubes left because of all the ectopic pregnancies. So part of the reason we came back to Australia was to start that journey and start our own family. I'm 44 years young, Anna's only 37, but both very young at heart and young in energy. And because of the lessons that I've learned over the years, I'm A, not fearful of being an older parent. B, I'm going to be a much better parent because of the work that I've done, and my kids are not going to be on the receiving end of the intergenerational trauma that I took on. And with what I've learned, I can live until I'm 150, no worries. It's like, so, like, having a family, like we babysit my brother's kids a lot. We got 4 under 10, and we're really good at it. Like, we're really good at it. We've just started doing it. We take 3 out of the 4. The youngest one's only 3, because we're able to implement a lot of the things that we've learned, and we don't fly off the handle when they do something. There's a much better, more functional, less traumatizing way of doing it that's going to expedite a much faster learning process. So that's the personal side of things, Prosper. But for me, I just want to continue my impact in the world. I'm not as so driven to be famous like I once was, being a motivational or transformational speaker, but I really would love for my book to have a lot more impact. I don't have a big publisher behind me. It's been out for nearly 2 years. And so as my profile rises, then the attention to the book and doing things like this, being on great podcasts like yours, all helps with that. So I'm just submitting to the universe and trusting in my divine intelligence that things will take care of themselves. And I'm led towards the things that help move the needle with that. So it's a very different Laban that you're talking to now versus maybe 12 months ago.
Congratulations, man. It's not easy. I mean, obviously, giving yourself back to yourself. So many people don't want to go on that journey. And I viscerally believe being a dad of 2 beautiful girls, I wish you all the best, man, because it's the best feeling ever. And you loving reading every time, they wake up at night, you could just pick up a book and read and then just calm them down while you're reading. And that is actually happening. And so much more that you can teach them and watch them learn and watch them teach you what you taught them. It's a beautiful feeling, man. And I wish you could experience that. But I know,
Thanks, brother.
Being the person that you're now becoming, I think you're just another Steve Harrison in the making, but in a Laban flavor, where people will only reach out to you when they actually know the kind of value that you can be, and you don't need to be in the limelight, because the limelight is just bread and cheese. What do they call it? Bread and circuses for the masses. The algorithm is designed just to get people trapped, into this whole setup. But when you reach out and you're in a whole different world, I think you, my friend, with what you've learned, it's just you just getting better and better at, if that's a word.
It is now. It is now, Prosper.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent with me on the call today, man, Laban. I mean, you shared with us your incredible journey with us and given us steps that people can literally, start betting on themselves and have happier existence. And what I've learned is, from what you're saying, if you're going through stuff, obviously you should be paying attention, because one day you would have a good story to tell on the Online Prosperity Show.
Mate, exactly right. And part of this healing journey is verbalizing a lot of the stuff that we've gone through, most of it, in fact, but from a position of ownership, not from victimhood. Because when you tell people your problems, 90% of people don't care, and 10% are glad it's happening to you and not them.
Absolutely. And so many people don't take that ownership of really pointing the finger back at them, not pointing at the wall, or expecting, like you said earlier on, safety nets, that are just designed to keep them enslaved. Now, thank you so much. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for whoever's watching right now. And I can't wait to see the rest of the journey unfold. I think you're ready now for the next phase of where you're headed to. And obviously, you've done the work, and it's only a matter of you now putting it out there in the form of, like you said, the family or the people you're going to be serving. So I can't wait to see that happen. Now, for those that are watching right now, if you found this episode as inspiring as I did, I'd encourage you to go and rewatch this, because there's so much that was thrown in that you might have missed out, and it would make proper sense when you watch it again. Or if this is not for you, why don't you share it with a friend that is going through stuff, a friend that is probably about to hit rock bottom right now, and just get them to understand that hitting rock bottom doesn't physically hurt. There's people that have gone through that can actually help you be, do, and have a happier existence. And if you are ready to take ownership of who you are becoming, I want you to write in the comments, bet on you, because that's the title of the book that Laban wrote. Just write in the comments, bet on you. And I think Laban will be looking at the comments and looking at the impact of what this video has actually done for him. And yeah, thank you so much. Until next time, keep thriving and stay courageous. Bye for now.